Welcome back, Recruit. To finish off our discussion of object-oriented programming, we're going to discuss private methods as well as special methods. Let's begin by showing you how to add a private method. Here we can see our agent class from the last couple of lessons, and we have this init method, report method, and trueName method. So if I run this, and let's define an agent, so we'll say A is equal to an agent, and we're going to need a first name. So we'll just use what we did last time, Alan, last name, Turing, and the code name will be hero. And if we hit A dot and then hit tab, you'll see a drop-down list of the methods that are available as well as the attributes. So we can say report as a method, or we can call an attribute such as their first name, and we can see Alan. Now, what if you actually wanted to hide a method? Maybe you have a method in your class that's really more for designing the upkeep of the class. Maybe you have some methods that you want to call within other methods, and you don't really want them available to users for fear that they may use them incorrectly. What you can do is create a private method. And private methods look the same as a normal method, except you start them off with a single underscore, and then you call the method whatever you want. You can say private method or just private. It's up to you. But the key here is that they start with a single underscore. And then what you can do is say self, and then really whatever you want. Here we'll just have self, and we'll have this method just say print private method. So the purpose of this private method is really just to work with other methods inside of your object. You noticed here in trueName, we had to call self.report. Maybe you're looking for additional functionality that you don't want to have available as a normal method. Instead, maybe you just want to have it as a private method. That way you can use it within the object, but whoever is the user using this new agent class, when they create one, it won't be available to them. So that's really the idea of the private method. By default, Python is very open by its nature, and other concepts from other languages, such as Java users, will be familiar with kind of public versus private ideas. It's actually really hard to obscure your code in Python. So if you have a script in Python, it becomes very difficult to try to hide your code from someone else who is going to use it. So keep that in mind. This idea of private method is really just to kind of guide the user into indicating that they shouldn't be messing around with this private method. The idea behind the private method is not to hide anything from the user itself. So we're going to run this cell again that has the private method. We're going to recreate our agent, and then notice we'll say report first name, and then if I say a dot and then hit tab, I won't see the private method. So basically this private method is not immediately visible to the user. And that helps the user realize that they shouldn't be playing around with that method, that it's not really meant for them to interact with. However, if you do want to call the private method, all you have to do is start with an underscore, and then you'll end up seeing a bunch of other methods and attributes. And these are a mix of both private as well as just special methods. And we're going to play around with some of these later on. But notice here at the very bottom, we can see our private method. So again, private doesn't mean that you're hiding this from the user. It really means that you're just guiding the user into realizing that they probably shouldn't be using this private method unless they really are familiar with the object itself. Now we saw a list of a bunch of special methods. Let's go ahead and discuss those. Special methods allow you to interact with Python's built-in functionality. For example, imagine I wanted to print the instance of my agent. So I said print A. Well, what happens is by default, I just get back main agent object at this location in memory. What if I wanted to check the length of my agent? Does that even make sense? Should an agent have a length? Well, in this case, you'll notice that it says object of type agent has no length. But maybe you're working with some sort of other object that you've created where you would like a result for length. In that case, you'll need to use special methods. Special methods allow you to interact with built-in Python functionality, such as the built-in print function or the built-in length function. Let's go ahead and explore these ideas by creating a new class. We're going to create a class called book, and we will say def and our special method in it, and this is special because it basically initializes all the parameters. So we'll take in a title, an author, and the pages of a book. And then we'll do the following. We'll say self.title is equal to title, self.author is equal to author, and self.pages is equal to pages. And then we will add in a special method, underscore underscore str underscore underscore self. And what this special method does is it provides a string representation of the book. And when you actually call print on an object, what it does is it looks at the class of the object and then it looks for this method. It looks for the string representation that it can print out. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to return string rep just so we can get an idea of how this would work. So I will create a book with the variable b. Whoops, forgot to add in the title. So we'll say the title is Python Rocks. The author will be James Bond, and the number of pages will be 200 pages. There we go. So now we've created our book object. Let's go ahead and print out our book object and see what happens. We get back string rep, which means when the print function is called on B, the print function looks at your class book and says, okay, is there a string representation of this object? And in that case, it looks for this special method underscore underscore str underscore underscore, and whatever it returns is what it prints out. In this case, for our class book, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to return string representation. Instead, what probably makes more sense when you print out a book is to have a little bit of a mixture. Maybe say title is and author is, and then we can use .format to pass in self.title and self.author. And note how I'm using the self here. This allows the class and the function and the method to understand that when we say self.title, we're referring to the book's own title, not some global variable called title, which is why it's so important to understand the use of self when you're working within methods inside of a class. So let's run this again. So we redefined our book. Let's run our book again. And now when I say print B, it says title is Python Rocks and author is James Bond. And this is a more typical representation of how you would be using your own creation of string representation. Because if you didn't have this, instead you'd be getting something that looks like this, agent object at some point in your memory. Now we can do the same thing for length. Right now, if we said, what's the length of the book, we'd get back object of type book has no length. And lucky for us, there is an attribute that really correlates well to length, which is the number of pages. So we should just have the number of pages be returned. To do that, we're going to use the special method that's connected to what the length function does. And that's just underscore underscore len underscore underscore, pass in self, and then we're going to return self.pages so that when you ask how long is the book, it just returns back how many pages it has. So we say b, print b, and if we check the length of the book, it returns back 200. So that's an example of two special methods that you'll be using when you're creating your own classes. Now keep in mind, there's a lot more special methods than just the two we've shown here, or 3 if you count the init method. But for right now, as you begin to just approach object-oriented programming, the only ones that you really need to worry about are the string representation and the length representation. Those are going to be the ones that you most commonly use, especially the string representation, so you can print out your own objects. Another one, just to show you various examples, is the del or delete special method. And this is what gets returned or what executes when you delete the actual object. So in this case, we can just type in anything and print a book has been deleted. So we're going to run this again. We're going to create a new book, b equals book Python Rocks James Bond, and then we're going to print the book, check the length of the book, and if we call the special del, which is a delete statement in order to delete a variable out of memory, we can type in delete book, and it says, delete b, that's what we defined as our variable, and then it says a book has been deleted. And then if we check b, it says b is no longer defined. So by default, delete b is going to remove whatever that variable is connected to in your memory space. However, we can add on to it by actually affecting the delete method here, or the special method, which basically says what would you like to occur in addition to deleting the variable when you call delete or del on the variable itself. And as we previously mentioned, you're not going to be using private methods or special methods that often when you're beginning to use object-oriented programming. We'll see you at the next lesson, Recruit.